today?
Jennifer Jones.
Guess what? Somebody was crazy enough to give us a radio show.
Oh my God. Do you think we can even do a radio show, Jennifer?
I know we can do a radio show. You know why?
Why?
Because I'm smart.
No, I think it's because you're crazy, funny, and full of joy.
So you don't think I'm smart?
Oh, yeah. And you're that too.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, so Holly, the real question is, why'd you pick me to be your co-host?
Wait a minute. I picked you. No, you picked me.
No, I picked you. What's up with that? Okay. So I'll take that. We picked each other.
Okay,
well, I guess it's because you're smart.
I'm definitely smart.
Crazy.
Okay, I'll own that one too.
Check mark.
Check mark.
Fun.
Sure.
And
We'll go
funny.
with fun.
But most of all, Holly, it's because you are extremely successful. So I am so delighted to be on today's show.
Wait. Smart, funny, successful. That sounds like you.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Okay.
A lot of so. I guess we ought to get started with the show. They played the intro music, so let's go.
I know. What are you superhero going on here?
Superheroes.
So what are we going to talk about today? What are we going to talk about? We got a lot of time to fill. What are we going to talk about?
Okay, so this is why I said that you picked me. We're talking about your favorite subject today, politics.
Oh, politics. Let me tell you something. We don't have that much time. We got a lot of time. We don't have that much time. So what we really need to do is narrow this down.
Narrow it down,
just
okay.
a little bit. So I tell you what. Why do we focus on primary elections?
Primary elections. Yeah, elections started today in Maryland. So yeah.
Early vote in Maryland just had the primary in Virginia. So
that's
we should be good to go.
Perfect. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, wait a second. Before we get into our real subject, we got to do some backup stuff.
Okay, back up. Go right ahead.
Back it up. Okay, first of all, this is the first show. How are we gonna do this?
I don't.
How does it work?
I don't know. I mean, we said we were gonna have a weekly show, interviews, commentary, talk show, debate. So here we are.
We are.
A brutal combination. A mix of brutal honesty.
Gotta be honest.
And let's say non-judgmental perspective.
Non-judgmental. Yeah, we'll work on the non-judgmental. Well, I'll work on the non-judgmental, but that's why I have you.
That's why I'm here.
That's why I have you. All right.
But what we really want to do is educate and empower. That's
Absolutely.
what we're about. We're about educating and empowering.
And I think, really decode some of this stuff that we hear in the media. I mean, really, who even knows what a primary election is anyway?
Right.
And why do we even have them? I mean, really? I mean, we hear everybody talking about them. We know it's some people running. Man, it seems like we have an election every other day.
Every other day. I mean, there was a D.C. primary,
oh,
Virginia
my God.
primary.
Yes,
Maryland.
I'm from Missouri. It's coming up in August.
Wow.
It's a lot going on.
So I think it's a great topic to get started with. But what I really love is that we're going to have guests.
That means we can have all our friends on.
Yes, all of our friends.
All of our friends. Any of our friends who are listening. Yes, you will be on. We have 48 shows to fill. So just know we will be inviting all of you on at one time.
Okay, before we tell them that they're invited on, we have to tell them that after we talk about our show topic, after we introduce everything, we're going to be really, really, really two streetwise hosts who are going to be combative sometimes, in your face sometimes. I mean, I'm prepared to hang up on call-in listeners.
I think it's fair.
That's
I think
it's
it's
our
fair.
first show.
But you're supposed to be blessings and rainbows. What happened?
Blessings and rainbows, but if you're talking crazy, I'm going to hang up.
We got to get a couple of crazies in because they got a point to make, too.
Yeah, and I'm
going to defend the crazy people in the world.
Defend the crazy people. See, that's why we're partners.
Absolutely. Explain to me why I have random stuff coming up on my computer. I don't know, but it's okay. We're going to work through it. In addition to the fact that we are going to have guests on, we're going to have some specific kind of guests on.
Yes.
And most importantly, I want to highlight the fact that we're always going to have a segment for the under 25. We want them to come on and share their views on any given topic so we can hear not just what's going on now, but what might be going on in the future.
Absolutely. And Holly, in this world of technological advancements, we absolutely want to make sure that we are engaged. So our callers will be able to both call in and listen in. And so we'll be sharing that information throughout the show as well, because it doesn't work. I mean, we're smart and we like to talk, but we do want to hear from you. It doesn't work without balance.
Absolutely. And in fact, let's go ahead and tell them where they can find us. First of all, you can find us on Facebook. Truth 360 by BDC on Facebook.com. Also, you can find us on Twitter. Guess what? It's the same thing. Truth 360 by BDC on Twitter, at Truth 360 by BDC. BDC, in case you didn't know, which you probably didn't because we haven't told you yet, stands for Black Dress Collaborative. And Black Dress Collaborative, what is Black Dress Collaborative, Jen?
Black Dress Collaborative is an amazing concept. We're kind of like a movement and kind of like a bubble of energy, but we are going to be connecting people together, making sure that people know each other, talk to each other, and engage and support each other for important, not just legislative matters, but whether it's health promotion, whether we're talking about business, entrepreneurship, leadership development. Black Dress Collaborative is going to help us connect, not just in the DMV, but all over the country, and dare I say, Holly, all over the globe.
Absolutely. That's why we chose internet radio, because we wanted to be worldwide, and now we are.
Thanks to Listen Vision Live. How about Listen Vision Live?
Yay! They may regret it, but we got a contract, so we're going to be here for a little bit longer.
At least.
Oh, one more place you can find us is on Google Plus, Truth 360 by BDC. Come join our community. We'll be here every Thursday, and if you tweet us, if you Facebook us, if you post something pretty much anywhere, check out Instagram. Oh, and Pinterest. I forgot we were on Pinterest.
Yes,
Lord,
we are.
I think we got the whole gamut covered.
We got
and you
it
can always find us by the code Truth 360 by BDC. So anywhere you look, guess where we are? We
We're
are
there.
Exactly.
And so, Holly, let's be formal for just 3 seconds. The name of our show is Truth 360. Truth 360 is a Black Dress Collaborative initiative. Black Dress Collaborative, our mission is to create a network of leaders from every level who work together transformatively to solve problems, engage in learning, inspire action, and create change. Black Dress Collaborative, Truth 360, Holly and Jennifer. Look us up on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram.
Absolutely. That was awesome. And, also I think it's important to say that, we will have guests, and we're going to use our guests to dig in a little deeper, but the ultimate goal is to entertain. Let's face it, we're in the entertainment business.
Yes, we are. We are so fortunate to be a part of this Listen Vision Live family. I'm so proud of Listen Vision Live and all of the guest hosts and shows that are on air, and I really want to give a big plug to our sister friend, Cheryl Wood. Playtime is over.
And
Yay.
we know that. Listen, our ultimate goal is to entertain with facts and those questions and answers that will compel you not just to listen to our show, which we hope you will do, but to really have a deeper self-assessment and understanding. Basically, our goal is to take on the day's truth. But you know what? Enough of that. Let's talk about what's going on right now.
Oh, my God.
What's
in the news today, another heartbreak. Ruby Dee. Ozzy and Ruby Dee were the couple of not just amazing actors, but they were also activists, legislatively active, involved in the civil rights movement, just leaders ahead of their time. And at 91 years old today, we lost another icon. I am still not over my girl, Maya Angelou. Phenomenal woman.
What?
Phenomenal woman. That is me. That's us, right, Holly?
That's us together.
And so we are just going to pause for the cause to say, Ruby Dee, sister, you left it all on the field. You gave us dynamic leadership, a dynamic example of refined womanhood, a dynamic example of marriage, a dynamic example of just great womanhood and why it's important to be engaged in your community and in society and legislative activity. So we couldn't have planned for her death, but we absolutely, positively do want to give a big ups to the legislative civil rights work that they did. And if you don't know, guys, Google them, Ozzy Davis and Ruby Dee, and just learn more about Black history. 365.
I mean, absolutely. And I would dare say that it was the combination of Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee that really set the standard for how celebrities can use their status as celebrities to really bring issues to the forefront. And, they not only will they be missed, but I hope that their legacy will continue in what we see in today's celebrities. They have big shoes to fill. So I hope there's some folks out there that are paying attention, that are striving to try to get them filled.
Absolutely. I mean, and just to be so impressive, I mean, she lost Ozzie Davis, and even though she shared with us what that was like after being with someone for so many years, but then we continue to see her in movies. We continue to see her just always speaking out, still standing up. So I'm just honored to be able to have this platform to pause for a moment and celebrate both she and Maya Angelou. So Holly, why don't we dedicate the rest of the month to Dr. Maya Angelou and Ruby Dee and find just some pearl of wisdom to share for the rest of the month.
That's, of course, you would bring that in. I would never think to do that, and that's why you're here.
That's why I'm here. And then the next thing is that while we're thinking about people, there was just a news article, I think, released across the wire about Tracy Morgan. So we want to continue to lift Tracy up in prayer as well. You want to share, Holly?
Oh, my goodness, yes. I mean, actually, something just came around and from one of my hometown newspapers, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, looking at officials looking at the truck driver's commute in Tracy Morgan's crash. And basically what it's talking about is, these truck drivers, in case you didn't know, they're day in and day out hauling from one end of the country to the other. And while they have regulations about brakes, they also have pressure from the companies to deliver on time, or that's their money on the line.
That's right.
And basically, the guys, even though people died in that crash, although not Tracy Morgan, he's basically saying he's not responsible because, hey, he was just out there trying to make a living.
Wow. I mean, one of my brothers is actually a truck driver, so I'm going to send out all the love to the truck drivers in the world. But we all see the swaying on the street all of the times that we're on the highway and out of concern. And so, I'm not one who pushes regulation, because I don't like to be regulated and controlled and in a box. But I do think that this is a time for us to pause, one of those teachable moments, to really look at, where we might need to put in some things, not regulations to control or prevent, but just to help the truck drivers to not feel that pressure and put some constraints on delivery, because our society doesn't work without deliveries.
Well, the article in the Post reports that accidents involving tired truck drivers tend to have larger number of deaths and severe injuries because the damage inflicted by trucks weighing tens of thousands of pounds. And that's what the safety investigators are saying. Scientists also report that sleep deprivation affects behavior in the same way that alcohol affects judgment and slowing reflexes. So, of course, I think it's really important to think about, why we have the NTSB regulating this, which is the National Transportation Safety Board. We don't want to get caught up in all these acronyms.
Absolutely. But it's a valid point that you make, because I think in some of our future shows we'll also have to make sure to talk about, people don't realize how much sleep deprivation, as well as not being well hydrated with water, all of those things impair you just as if you are in the presence of some narcotic drug or alcohol. And that's really important stuff too. So thanks a million for bringing that up. I'm so glad that that we did talk about that, because I was pretty shocked when I saw, the truck driver saying, hey, I'm just trying to make a living, but you killed somebody.
Hey, let me tell you something. Anything can affect your health. Anything can affect your health. This other story that caught my eye is actually talking about how the recession has caused the number of suicides to go up, not just in this country, but in Canada and Europe. They're linking more than 10,000 suicides between 2008, which we know is when it started to go downhill, and 2010 to depression. And so, I think, we have certainly in the news seen so many stories linked to what happens when we don't take care of our mental as well as our physical
Absolutely.
self.
I mean, when we look at the shootings on military bases right here at the Navy Yard, all of those things are so important to us really letting people know and understand how mental health affects us. And later on, Holly, I hope I remember to share a mental health conference that we have coming up just to talk about the same thing, that we don't really give enough credence. If someone had a heart attack, someone falls and breaks their ankle, we rush them to the emergency room. But when a person's really either just having a tough time coping, suffering with depression, or has any other issues, we still kind of stigmatize them and say, you don't need a therapist, you don't need medication. But hey, things have gotten tough. This society is moving 24/7. This society is moving at warp speed. So I really do think that we need to really keep all of these things. So all of my friends out there who are therapists and who are psychiatrists, psychologists, know that we do need you to come in, because that's another show topic. Yay!
We're going to be getting all our friends on the air.
Shameless.
But listen, we're talking about elections. Is there anything happening that affects elections going on?
Oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about primaries. But before we do, Holly, can I please just share a little bit about why it's so important to have political engagement? Since we're in today's silo of politics, your favorite subject, and mine too. It's so important because there was something that came down today. Marissa Alexander is a young woman in Florida. I think she's 33 years of age. She was involved in a domestic violence circumstance in her home. And her husband or the perpetrator attacked her. And this was not the first time he had harmed her. And she really felt like he was going to choke her and kill her because he promised to do so. So she got her gun, but rather than shooting him, she gave a warning shot in the air. And because of the stand your ground, now you can shoot and kill someone under stand your ground and you get off scot-free. I don't know if your mind is free and your heart is free, but at least you don't go to jail. But she's facing 20 years of incarceration because she fired a warning shot. She didn't even shoot the guy. No, I wouldn't have shot the guy. Bad Jennifer. But I'm just
what
saying.
I was thinking.
I know you were thinking. What were you thinking, Holly?
I was thinking there might be somebody laying on my carpet and I need to get some of my carpet cleaner.
And stand your ground would have worked. But what's fascinating to me about this story and what's relevant is that the judge today delayed sentencing her and delayed the trial until December because just this year, a new law or an amendment to the existing law was made. Stand Your Ground has a new amendment that says a person can fire a warning shot rather than going forward with the murder. And so if Stand Your Ground allows people to fire warning shots, then we'll be able to go forward with those warning shots. And that means that Marissa doesn't have to spend 20 years in jail because she elected to fire her gun in the air instead of shooting someone dead.
Yeah, I hear it, and that's a great outcome. But, as an attorney, I got to stick up for the precedents of the whole thing.
Stick up for the precedents.
I mean, really, we're holding trials, waiting on laws to create so that we can get justice. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest with you.
I don't know, but at least, Holly, we do have this avenue. And what I'm impressed about is that after Stand Your Ground became so known through the Trayvon Martin trial and murder, and then in addition to that, we have Marissa's case. I think that to see that in less than a year, people galvanized themselves, put together some legislation, went to their elected leadership, and really got some action and traction, that for that woman, it may have taken a year for that to happen, but she doesn't have to give 20 years up of her life when she didn't even kill the guy.
Let me tell you something.
Well,
I mean, I agree. Death is a game changer for sure. I mean, we can't deny that death is a game changer. But hey, we're going to have to see how that one works out. Because all I'm saying is, if this had been, let's say we were talking about something where we felt a little bit more sympathetic towards the victim and not the perpetrator in this case, would we really want to set the precedent that we're going to wait for something that favors the victim to maybe pass. I mean, the other thing is, hey, we're going to talk about this a little bit later when we have one of our legislators from North Carolina on, but hey, we all know nothing's promised in any of these state legislators, and you think Congress can't get it together. Well, the state legislatures aren't any better. So, I mean, I don't know. We're waiting on and then you look at things like the Voting Rights Act, right? Yes. That the Supreme Court decision that just came down. I was in a meeting yesterday talking about that. And they're like, well, we're trying to push Congress to fix what the court broke. It's the same thing. I mean, you know, we've got to get out of this chasing our tail justice situation. You know,
Absolutely.
We're either going to get it right or, you know, live with the consequences. And, you know, there's something to be said for should it even be applied retroactively. I have to admit, in this case, I would say, of course, I don't want the woman to spend 20 years in jail. It's ridiculous. But, hey, they didn't do that when they had the sentence variation between cocaine and crack.
Absolutely.
And all those brothers that got locked up
Absolutely.
and their lives destroyed because they couldn't afford cocaine. When they started making the sentence disparity more even, they didn't let none of them brothers out.
Absolutely. But I think, Holly, that just justifies why we're here. I mean, we did ask the question why they give us a radio show. And if we continue to educate and empower people, maybe we can start some movements and get some things to happen before it's a crisis and before somebody is looking at 20 years.
It's true. It's true. I have to tell you, though, some of these laws are just crazy, and I'm not sure how I really feel about them. You know, one of the other laws that's being passed all around the country is this stuff on legalizing marijuana versus, you know, decriminalization. Well, let's talk about what some of this stuff does. I was reading an article the other day that cannabis doubles young men's risk of infertility. Maybe if we spent more time talking about that, we wouldn't have to deal with nobody smoking weed all the time.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm just saying.
And I always share that, you know, the scientist in me, I was like Bill Clinton. I don't know anything about doing that. However, the health professional in me does really think that we misinform and mistag a lot of things, that if people understood what they were doing to their bodies based on their choices, I think they'd make different ones. And in this case, we don't need to argue about whether or not to legalize marijuana. Just send this story out. You have a risk of infertility if you continue to smoke.
Hey,
cannabis.
let's put it in real terms. According to the article in the Independent, it states, we found that cannabis doubles the risk of men under 30 having a poor sperm. Statistically, it just jumps out.
That's incredible, Holly. I just think that we need to stay right where we are, educating and empowering our community every single week.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, let's see here. We got a lot of stuff to do today. We better get to it. But you know what we need right now? We need a break. Oh my God, I feel like I've been talking forever.
We are.
We're only 25 minutes
in.
How about we get some help and get some music going for a little while we bring on our guests?
I think that's great, Holly. And you know, I'm happy to be here. So here it goes.
All
True
right.
360. Woo.
Our backyard is one of the vehicles that help to free the people from this chain and bondage of oppression. After they took I from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation, triumphantly. Won't you skip to sing another song of freedom?
mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing another song of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, redemption song, redemption
There's no end to this music, bro.
And we're back, and we're getting ready to be joined by some of our guests. But before we do that, I think we need to answer the big question in the room.
What's the big question in the room?
I mean, really, what is a primary election anyway?
You know, Holly, since we decided on this being our opening topic, I've been asking young people, all kinds of people, what are primary elections? And in a place where high information voters are around, they get it. But so many people don't know what primary elections are. And I think this is a great opportunity to educate.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, there's actually all different kinds of primaries.
Absolutely. I mean, there are primaries, but before you can even talk about primaries, Holly, you have to talk a little bit about election cycles. And so I think for me, that was the huge thing, that we know every 4 years there's a presidential election. But now we're facing a midterm election, and a number of people still don't really pay attention to how critically important these midterm elections are.
Well, let's do this. What I'd like to do first is let's introduce our two guests, and then
Absolutely.
I got a little video that I found that I think will make it really simple for everybody to understand what primary elections
All right,
are really
it's great.
about.
So you want to introduce Marcus, or shall I?
All right, let's actually start with the guy in the room,
All
and
right.
then we'll move to this camera.
Terry, we appreciate you so much for being our first guest on our first show at True 360. Yay!
Thank you for having me.
And Terry, you've been so wonderful and patient to be here with us, supporting us, helping us jump off this first show well. And I'm excited to have you here. So while I know you and I love you, Terry, share with all of our listeners who you are and tell us something about you.
Well, my name is Terry Spigner, and I when folks ask who I am, I normally tell them I'm just a country boy from Alabama trying to make it in the big city. This city or this metropolitan area called Washington, D.C., and the Prince George's County area. I happen to be the chairman of the largest Democratic party in the state of Maryland, which is the Prince George's County Democratic Central Committee. That party is about 22% of the registered voters out of the 24 jurisdictions in Maryland. 22% of those registered Democrats live in Prince George's County. That's what I do as a passion. I've been the chairman of that party for 6 years. I've been a member of that Central Committee for 9 years. But what I do to make a living is I'm an entrepreneur, own an IT firm that's 24 years old. I have 20 employees. What I do as a passion and a mission is been married 25 years to my wife. I have 3 kids. And so I wear a lot of hats. I'm also a big fan of Miss Jennifer Jones. She is a very dynamic lady and a very good friend. So whatever I can do to support the program, I'm definitely here to support you.
Well, I'm just so happy to have you, Terry, because I'm always telling Holly, you got to meet Terry. Terry, you are just alike. He knows numbers, he can tell me anything. Terry is my go-to guy whenever we're talking about politics, and not just politics politics from what's happening right now, but in terms of forward thinking about how to develop leaders. And Holly, that's something you're so passionate about. So tell us about your guest.
Oh, well, let me tell you, I don't even know what I can say about Marcus Brandon. First of all, Marcus Brandon is a state representative from the great state of North Carolina, so another guest with Southern roots. And actually, Marcus and I met. He probably is going to hate me for telling this story, but hey. We can hear you, Marcus. But Marcus actually used to work for me.
Wow.
And he was an amazing fundraiser, as evidenced by his recent run for Congress, where he raised an incredible amount of money. Actually, I'm sure he'll tell us all about that as part of this discussion. But let me tell you something. Marcus is smart. He is very capable. He's also funny, and he's just somebody who is just good to have other people that work hard in this movement. And one of the things that I think we try to do is to really engage people from all over. And hey, we can't really be talking about 360 if we really don't have people from everywhere. So I reached out to Marcus, actually, using our social media, caught him on I think it was Google this time, but we're on Facebook, we're on everything. And I said, hey, Marcus, I got a radio show. He was like, what? Wow. And I was like, and as a matter of fact, you need to be my first guest. So we are so happy to have Marcus Brandon from the great state of North Carolina. Marcus, please share your official bio with us. You're on. Talk.
Hi.
Hi.
I didn't hear the last question.
I'm saying, go ahead
Hi.
and tell us about yourself, the official version.
Okay, well, the official version is that I am Representative Marcus Brandon from the great state of North Carolina. I have been representing my district for the past 2 terms. And like Holly said, that we go way back. And I'm very excited about this new show. I think it's important that one of the reasons why I ran is because of the marginalization of the African American community, particularly by African American leaders and processes. And so I think that that my candidacy and my continued success in my district proves that a lot of African Americans are asking these same type of questions. And I have been very proud representative of the African American community, and particularly folks that are but the least of these. I do represent the poorest zip code in the entire state, and I have all of the challenges that you can imagine that come along with that. And so it's been challenging, but it's been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's been the greatest thing I've ever done. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here.
Well, look, thank you for coming on, and I have to warn you in advance. I know that you're in North Carolina, but I don't know if you heard the first top of our show, but we shamelessly will be plugging all of our friends, and actually on the way over here, as what frequently happens with Jennifer and I, we're running to get to the studio. It's raining, so we look a little cray-cray today.
Cray today.
But we've already come up with the second show that we're going to have you back on as a guest, because we think it's really important to also talk about what happens after elections. A lot of people, they feel like, oh, maybe you lost or won or whatever, but even in the loss, the leadership didn't start with the election, and the leadership doesn't end with the election. And we want to talk about life after the election, so we'll have you back on a future show for that. I'm just telling you to put it in your calendar early.
So, Marcus and Terry, it is
I can't do this a lot freer these days.
Marcus and Terry, it's so wonderful to have both of you be our first guest on the show. Marcus, I had the pleasure of meeting you and was just so impressed by your leadership and your drive and ambition. So when Holly said you'd be here, I was overjoyed.
Absolutely. Let's jump into
Thank you,
this.
sir.
Let's jump into this topic a little bit, and we're going to start with a little education for all of us. We have a video that we're going to show that actually breaks down in simple language, which is what I like. Simple language. What is a primary?
What is a primary? And while we watch this video, I'm going to start tweeting out and texting out to you guys.
Primary elections are how political parties in the United States pick their strongest candidate to run for president. The parties do this by holding mini-elections in each of the states, and the candidates with the most votes from these elections becomes the party's official nominees. These nominees then face each other in the national election for president. But this isn't the whole story. There are 5 things that make it a bit more complicated than that. Complication number 1, primaries versus caucuses. In every state, the local party leaders decide how to run their elections. The 2 most common choices are primaries and caucuses. Primaries are just like standard elections. Go to the polls whenever you can, stand in a long line, hide in a booth, then tick a box or press a button, and your vote is cast in complete anonymity. A caucus, however, is a public vote. People gather in groups wherever space is available, then literally take sides in a room with everyone else who likes the same candidate. The groups debate each other, and, if people change their minds, they need to physically switch sides. At the end of the debates, the party representatives count the number of people in each group. If you leave too early, your vote doesn't count. This description of primaries and caucuses is really all you need to know, but the specifics can vary wildly. That's because there are 50 states, all of which hold at least 2 primaries and caucuses for the big parties, and possibly more for the small parties. Covering all the local variants would take a tediously long time, which your short attention span for boring political videos wouldn't tolerate. And you need to stay focused because there are 4 more things to come. Complication number 2, who can vote? In the national presidential election, all American citizens over the age of 18 can vote, with 2 exceptions. You can't live here or here. But primaries are in-state elections with lots of different rules. Most states and parties will only let you vote in the primary if you're an official member of the party. This is called a closed primary because the voting is closed to non-party members. But some citizens are independents and not registered with any party. If you're an independent and live in a state with closed party elections, tough luck. No voting for you. Some states, however, have semi-closed primaries where independents can pick one and only one primary to vote in. Parties allow this because the presidential election is often determined by independents, so knowing which candidates they like is useful. Finally, a few states and parties really play it fast and loose with open primaries. Here, any citizen, no matter which party they're registered with, can pick a primary to vote in. But it's not just the states that have primaries. They're also held in the District of Columbia and the oft-forgotten territories. Holding primaries here is a bit odd though, considering that territorial residents can't vote in the actual presidential election. Lastly are the Americans living abroad who, depending on the party, vote in a block as though they all live together in one big extra state. When all these elections take place depends on complication number 3, who votes when. Primaries aren't conducted all at once but are spread out over a year. This leads to fights between the states about who gets to be at the head of the line and who is stuck at the back. Inevitably, last-minute leapfrogging of dates happens even though the parties often take away votes from these uncivil states. When it comes to being number 1, nobody beats New Hampshire, who wrote it into state law that their primary will always be at least a week ahead of everyone else's. Which isn't a problem until some other state gets the bright idea to do the same, and then we have an infinite loop in our system and have to force quit the law. But wait, you say, doesn't Iowa already go first? Yes, but New Hampshire lets them get away with it for 2 reasons. First, Iowa's election is a caucus, and so New Hampshire is still technically the first primary, and second, New Hampshire thinks that Iowa is stupid and doesn't matter. Other states try to boost their influence not by cutting in line, but by forming an alliance and holding their primaries at the same time. The biggest alliance of the election cycle is called Super Tuesday, where, depending on how many states can agree with each other, around half of them might participate, giving out a whole pile of votes. Which brings us to complication number 4, votes that aren't votes. So this whole time you were probably thinking that citizens gave votes straight to the candidates. But no. Instead, the votes are given to a bunch of guys called delegates who in turn give them to the candidates as requested. Maybe. Depending on the state, delegates might be required to vote as the citizens did, or they might be completely free to ignore the citizens and vote for whomever they want. Who are these people? The delegates are local party VIPs, such as state reps and officials. The more citizens who live in a state, the more delegates that state gets. Later in the year, when all the states have finished their primaries, the delegates travel to a huge gathering for their party called the National Convention. It's here that the official vote to select the party's nominee for president happens. But it's not just the delegates who do the voting. Complication number 5, superdelegates. Superdelegates are the top members of the party, such as congressmen and former presidents. They go to the National Convention not to represent the people, but to represent the current party establishment and can vote for whomever they want. Depending on the party, superdelegates might be up to 20% of the voters at the National Convention. Usually by the time the national convention happens, all the candidates save one have dropped out of the race, so the convention is just a rubber stamp and a big party. But if the fight between candidates is still ongoing, the delegates and superdelegates are the ones with the final decision. In summary, over the course of a year, the states plus DC plus the territories and the Americans abroad hold their primaries or caucuses. When finished, the delegates representing the citizens who voted in those elections travel to the national convention. Most of the delegates are forced to vote as the citizens of their state wanted them to, but some of them are free to vote as they like. At the national convention, the delegates meet up with the superdelegates who represent the best interests of the party, and together they make the final decision on who will be the nominee for president. Tired? Don't be, because only now does the race for the presidency begin. Of course.
All right. Well, hopefully that made it clear as mud, right?
Made it clear as mud.
I think the one thing that we definitely know for sure is that, and that's why we called this show Primary Election Politics Double Elimination, because basically what you figured out is, hey, this thing is rigged by the parties. It's not really about what the people want at the end of the day. I mean, if you're in a closed primary situation and you're an independent, you can't vote for anybody.
Absolutely. And then, to really begin to understand the 4-year presidential election, why the midterms are so important, because they determine the House and the Senate. They really determine what those numbers look like. And we see how not getting along, when there's not focused collaboration between the White House, between Congress, you get nothing but a mess.
Absolutely. Listen, we're going to start going to our desks and ask some questions, but I want to get the rest of the world in on this conversation. So if you have any questions or comments, tweet us at
Truth360 by BDC.
Or post on our Facebook page at Truth360 by BDC. All right, let's get our guest in on this conversation.
Absolutely. So, Terry, what gives? Because, Holly and I always look at things from two sides of the same coin, two different sides. And I'm always thinking about the impact of voter turnout. But what are really primaries? What role do they really serve? And why are they important? Or should they be?
In our current system, primaries are critically important because they determine who face off for the general election. Unfortunately, since this country hasn't spent a lot of time in the last, I would say, 30 years really focusing on civic education, particularly in our K through 12 education system, people have forgotten about how important primaries are. Oftentimes, I talk to folks during election cycles, and they tell me that, yes, I'm going to vote on the real election, which in their mind is November. But depending on where you live, that may be too late, because someone else has determined who your representative is going to be in the primary. In, say, a jurisdiction that is a majority Republican jurisdiction or a jurisdiction that is a majority Democratic jurisdiction, whoever wins the primary will automatically win the general because of the voter registration. Our county, Prince George's County, Maryland, is about 79% Democratic registered voters. So the Democrat that wins the primary is going to automatically win the general. So you have to really pay attention on who's running in the primary and make sure that you advance the best person to the general election, because that person is more than likely going to win. The same thing happens in the state of Maryland, which has about a 58 to I think about a 30% registration Democrats over Republican. The Democrat that wins the primary for the last 40 years, with the exception of one time, wins the gubernatorial election. So primaries are very important because oftentimes that may be the only time that you really have a voice on who's going to win the general election and who's going to advance to the general election.
We saw something similar in your district, Marcus. You have similar numbers. Talk about the impact of primary elections in North Carolina.
Well, there's two impacts, and you're right. I always make the joke that I could literally, in my district, I could literally, after the primary, I could literally walk down Main Street, smack 3 women across the face, and still get reported in the paper for it and get elected by 70% of the vote. I have more people registered who vote straight Democratic ticket than I have even Republicans that are registered in my district. And so that is a huge impact, because what I've always tried to to diffuse is the incumbency protection. And nothing protects incumbents more than primaries because it costs a lot of money to run an election, and if you don't have money and you run up against an established incumbent, it is very, very difficult to beat these folks in a primary because number one, you don't have the turnout, and number two, it's going to take you a little bit more time and money to be able to overcome that establishment feature. Because let's face it, the people who vote in those primaries are rank and file Democratic voters that are very engaged and more in tune to dealing with establishment issues. And so, but the bigger issue here for us in the South, I think that, and not even in the South, but mainly in the South, and across the country, where you've seen Republicans have taken over legislatures and gerrymandered districts the way they have. Now it's critical for African Americans to be able to talk about the impact of that, because what you have is that they're now able to control the conversation within the Black community of who even gets elected. This is done purposefully, I think, in terms of, if we're going to have Democratic districts, and then we're going to pack them all to make Black districts, and then we can control which Black candidate comes out of that to make sure that we don't have people that are going to talk about things that we don't want them to talk about, and we're going to continue to have a status quo conversation. Then that propels the problem that African Americans have in the South of being able to talk about poverty and issues that concern us, because the representation is now split, and so we have a serious problem with that, because now you don't have allies. Because now the General Assembly in North Carolina went from 14 to 15 African Americans, but because we gerrymandered the districts, and now we have more Black representation than we ever had. However, we don't have the allies, and so it kind of looks like Black people whining, this, that, and the other, and people can just dismiss us very much because we don't have our white Democratic allies with us anymore, because they gerrymandered all the districts to be mainly just Black districts. And then you have, establishment Black people representing those districts. And so it really presents a huge problem within the African American community to move forward beyond status quo when you've had a double establishment process take place in terms of how we deal with primaries. And so I'm very concerned about the fact, and I think your previous guest was correct, that we don't have the education in our K through 12, or even outside of that, even in the churches, to really emphasize. Our state is ruined because of the fact that we didn't vote in primary in 2010, and that is the reason. And so it has huge implications, and we've got to be able to. I'm glad you're discussing that, because particularly our states in the South and African Americans in the South, this is really a bombshell.
Absolutely. And I think both of you all have made this point, but I just want to beat the horse till it can't get up anymore.
That's right, to make sure that everybody really gets it and really is educated.
Yeah, because actually, to be honest with you, from a political strategy standpoint, in many of these cases, particularly where these districts are so gerrymandered, where it's effectively a one-party district, I would much rather you go out and vote in the primary and stay home in November. Not that I'm advocating that, but I'm just saying, depending on where you live, that would actually be way more effective.
I think you're absolutely right, Holly, because at the end of the day, we put so much into that November election. We know that Tuesday, we're looking for it. But how do we begin now to really make sure that our communities, our specific demographics that have interest, whether you're talking about moms and dads and parents who are thinking about the education and school system, or you're thinking about law enforcement and safety, health, education, economics, all of these areas are very broad, but as we were saying early, all politics is local. So what do we do, or what kinds of strategies can we implement to really help people get the significance and to begin to get people to galvanize and organize, to pay attention, go to candidate forums and listen to those people trying to become elected leaders at the primary level?
Absolutely. Hey, and let's talk about this impact stuff. You know what I'm saying? I don't know about you, but I think that folks really just don't realize the actual impact that it has. I mean, we're talking about record low turnout, not just low turnout, record low turnout. And one of the reasons that I was pumped about trying to do this show at this point is, hey, we've had some primaries, but hey, it's a long summer, folks, and we got lots of primaries to go. So I wanted to let the people around the country, like Maryland, like my home state of Missouri, where the primaries in August, let people know, hey, you guys are living in these kind of districts. You need to be getting out and vote.
And because, as Marcus said, it's really the opportunity that you have that's unique because it's small.
Yeah. Marcus is actually in session right now, so we really thank him. He's in the middle of big budget fights going on. Talk about the impact that low voter turnout in these primary elections has on real issues that concern people.
Well, one of the things that especially African Americans, like we have huge issues. We have 53% of our African American males do not graduate. We have 60% of our kids do not read on grade level. We have huge health disparities. We have economic disparities. And and Holly, we worked together. The first time we worked together is the solution to all of these impacts, and that is the fact that we have people who have been in office for way too long who don't really deal with these issues, whether you're black, Canada, or not. That's just the reality of the situation. But the way that you can increase voter turnout is that if you start getting quality candidates, and I'm not talking about, what I'm talking about, but like, you get quality candidates to go
you might have to define quality because everybody has a different opinion of that.
Get quality candidates and we need to stop fearing primarying other Democratic leaders. Simply because they've been there for 20 years doesn't mean that they get to stay there for another 25. And it is okay for you to primary a person and then of your own party, especially when that particular seat is only a Democratic or a Republican seat. The only race is a primary, so it's totally appropriate for someone to primary another Democrat if the seat is only a Democratic seat. We have had it in our psyche for many, many years that, especially on the Democratic side, that we have to wait our turn and we have to wait for these people to retire and we have to do all of these things before someone else can run. And that's how you get low turnout, because the problem is that there's nobody even running against these people, or the second thing is it's not a very high quality candidate that can be well funded or be able to make a dent into the election to make it interesting that people actually would pay attention to the race. So I think that if we start looking at educating the public, but not even that, our leaders, to say that, you know what, simply because you have this post doesn't mean that you get to keep it. It's the people's seat, not yours. And secondly, is that we're going to primary. If you're not dealing with the fact that I've got half my kids not graduating and they're going to prison, and this is a cancer in the community, and it continues, and people are literally dying because of it, we're not going to let you stay there. And it's okay if I primary you. I won an election by primarying a Democrat that had been in office for 30 years, and that was because he wasn't doing anything. And so, it's okay. And I think that young people and other folks, and more progressive folks, or whatever your ideological is that you just have to get in your mindset that it's okay to primary other Democrats when you're in a safe Democratic seat. It is the election.
Absolutely.
And so,
that's what we have to do. I'm glad you made that public service announcement, Marcus, because I want to go to Terry here and say we've got an opportunity to do that in Maryland because we got 2 more weeks before our election comes up. So what are some of the things that if folks don't get out and vote in Maryland that we can see impacted?
Well, what you're going to see impacted in the state of Maryland is that you're going to potentially, again, have less than 20% of the people in the state, less than 2 out of 10 people will determine who's going to govern the state for the next 4 years. If right now looks like the numbers are going to be for 2014 somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20% turnout statewide. And I'll be surprised if we get to 25% turnout. So that means that less than 3 people out of 10 will determine who will govern the other 7 people who don't show up to vote on primary. It's going to determine whether or not we have the first African American governor in the history of the state of Maryland. It's going to determine whether or not we have the first African American female lieutenant governor in the state of Maryland. It's going to determine whether or not we have the first lesbian governor in the state of Maryland.
Right.
Those are three real choices for folks to make history in the state of Maryland, but potentially there can be less than 3 out of 10 people making that decision.
And let's talk about this, because what are we looking at on the Republican side? I mean, what is the likelihood that we would elect a Republican in any of those offices? Looking at who's in the field.
It has been done. It has been done. And Bob Ehrlich did that in 2002.
Sure.
He shocked the world. He was the first Republican governor to be elected in Maryland since Spiro Agnew.
Right.
And Terry, it's been one of my observations that, whenever you have each of the gubernatorial Democratic candidates has a Prince Georgian as their running mate. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always thinking about how is splitting the vote among those Democrats, and then there's such a hard-fought battle. How do we really make sure that we have those elected leaders chosen and become Democrat? Because I think that's how Ehrlich won. Mm-hmm. That the primary fight was so heated that it split the vote in Maryland. So this majority Democratic state ended up having a Republican to win the majority in the general election.
Well, just a small cliff note on Ehrlich. Ehrlich ran against a unprimaried opponent in the Democratic. That was Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. So there was negotiations to get all of her opponents out of the primary so that she could have a clear field to run against Ehrlich. So, and that was not a good decision, because then she was not forced to make good decisions for her running mate. She selected a former Republican who switched parties in order to run with her. That could potentially happen this go around is if folks don't come out to vote. Our numbers for 2012 were not good. Our numbers for the 2012 primary, the 2012 general election, and the 2010 election in the state of Maryland were very, very low. And right now, people have lost a lot of interest. Right. I want to go back to the representative of North Carolina quickly, talking about getting good people to run. And that's what I'm a firm believer in. Even though I'm the chairman of the largest Democratic Party in the state of Maryland, I don't just believe in electing Democrats for the purpose of electing Democrats. I believe in electing good Democrats.
That's awesome. Hey, we're at the top of the hour. Can you believe we made it through our first hour?
How about
that? Oh, my goodness.
High five. No, not high five. That's old school. Fist bump.
All right, let's take a song break, and we're going to come back with more guests. We got people on the phone. I think we're going to have a surprise guest.
I think so, because people are calling in on the Google number. People are tweeting in, texting in. I think it's awesome, Holly. So,
all right, well, let's get some music in here. We need to take a break. And we're back with Truth 360 live on ListenVisionLive.com. If you're listening to us, you're listening in with Holly Holiday and
Jennifer Jones.
And you know what? Before we get back into this week's topic, I want to do a little housekeeping. First of all, just know it's politics today, but it is not going to be politics every week. Next week, we're going to be talking about music. You know, I'm a big geeky, techie kind of type person, and I have really, and you know, we were talking about this the other day.
Absolutely.
Napster changed the game.
Napster changed the game. Napster changed the game so much that the entire music industry went out against them, sued them, and destroyed Napster.
Yeah, but I tell you what, Napster met their mark, because while Napster's destroyed, music was resurrected. The way we listen to music today, hey, Napster put albums out of business. When have you seen vinyl?
Never. Not only do we not see vinyl, and I love vinyl. I'm an old school girl deep down inside about music.
You can have it.
Yeah, just a little bit. But really, you don't even buy a CD anymore. Talking about vinyl, I mean, just before we were stacking towers of CDs, and now music downloads, you can make one or two great hits and get a music MP3 download, make your money, give your concerts, and be a celebrity worldwide.
Hey, at the end of the day, it's not even about that anymore. Look at all this radio streaming, but hey, we don't have time to talk about that. We got guests. We got to get back to it.
Absolutely.
But listen, one more thing. If you like what you hear, if you think we're doing a great job, support us. We're taking advertisers. And if you're interested in advertising on our show, email us at truth360@blackdresscollaborative.com. And we will get in touch with you to show you how you can be a part of this show. We have some great opportunities coming up. And don't think we're just going to be sitting in this studio all the time either. We got some live remotes playing that are going to be hot.
Planned already. We're going to be going to George Frazier's Power Networking Conference in a week.
Yep, talking about business leadership on the 26th.
And I'm so happy about that, Holly, because the primaries will be over. So if you don't have anything more, Holly, I want to say we have this great Google number, 202-681-2324. That's 202-681-2324. And Holly, I was so surprised when I answered the call. My first caller today is none other than Jolene Ivy.
I love Jolene.
Just mentioned Jolene Ivy, and we are
that?
so excited to have Jolene calling into the show. Jolene, and of course every other woman. Jolene is the president of Prince George's County delegation in the Maryland General Assembly, and so she's been a huge supporter of women's activities, women's engagement, as she leads all of the citizens of Prince George's County, and she works hard in Annapolis for us, fights hard for us, but she's also great because she was a Mocha Mom champion. And so I'm so happy to have you, Jolene. And before I ask you any question, please take a moment and introduce yourself to our listening audience.
Uh-oh, we kidding Jolene?
Jolene?
Uh-oh. We're
having a few technical difficulties. Just wait a moment here.
We're going to get it together.
Okay, Jolene, go right
There it
ahead. We
goes.
can hear you now.
Okay. Well, I was just saying, I'm Jolene Ivy. I'm chair of the Prince George's County delegation. Been a delegate for 8 years. And I'm married to Glenn Ivy, who used to be state's attorney for Prince George's County. You know, our 5 boys and I have lived in the county for many years. I went to High Point High School, so I graduated from back in 1979, and with the exception of going off to college, I've been here pretty much ever since. I love Prince George's County.
So, Jolene, what we're so excited about having you today is Terry Spigner is on with us, and I know you know Terry well from all of the great work that you guys have done for the Democratic Central Committee and for Democrats within Maryland. But we don't just want to focus on the Democratic Party, but we really want to dig into the significance of primary elections. So, Terry, you were just sharing.
Hey, Jolene, how are you?
Hey, Terry.
Good. Yeah, I was just sharing that right now, particularly in the state of Maryland and also in Prince George's County, the Democratic primary or the primary election is the election. You win that, you've essentially won the general. At the state level, you got to work a little bit, but in the county, the game is over. We have 100%
Right.
of our elected officials are Democrats. So what's
Right.
your thoughts on that?
Well, I know that it's so important, especially in Prince George's County, to vote in the primary, or you essentially are taking away your own voice. Because as you were saying, the primary election is essentially the general election. Now, when you consider the statewide elections, it can be a little different. When you look at what happened with Kathleen Kennedy Townsend and how she lost to Ehrlich before, it is possible to lose statewide. So that is another reason why primaries are so important. We have to make sure that we use the campaign season and the election to choose someone to represent the Democrats who not just wins the primary, but who can win the general. You know, if we end up electing somebody who isn't electable in the general election, well, we handed a victory and the state to the Republicans. So it's really important that people in Prince George's and around the state take their primary vote very seriously.
You know what? Very well stated, Jolene. This is Holly, and I just want to say, hey, this is my show, so I can say what I want to say. I'm a big supporter of the Gansler Ivy tickets. I'm so glad that you called. And, hey, I just want to give you a chance to just say, what makes what you and Doug are going to do for the state so great?
Well, we have so many great plans, which I can tell you about, but the most important thing to know is that what separates Doug Gansler from the other candidates is a record of success. Doug and I, of course, have spent many years building a great resume and showing that we are here to fight for you. And, Doug's done things like brought back $1.5 billion to help with the foreclosure crisis. I can't tell you that it solved the foreclosure crisis, but it did a lot more than anyone else has been doing. So it shows one of his big priorities. He's been a big fighter for the environment with 2 huge fines against corporate polluters for $4.5 billion against ExxonMobil for polluting our water and $4.5 billion against American Electric for polluting our air. And these are just too important of successes to ignore. He also was the person who started the first civil rights office in the state of Maryland, and he is also a big champion of HBCUs. And in addition, he was statewide co-chair of Barack Obama's campaign. Now, all I can tell you is that Anthony Brown went to law school with Barack Obama, but when the time came and Obama needed support, he turned his back on his friend and he endorsed Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm all about Hillary this time, and I really want her to win.
Yay!
But back
yay,
when
Hillary.
Obama needed Anthony was not there for him, but now he expects us to be there for him. But no thank you.
Thank you so much, Jolene, for calling in and supporting the show. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate it. I should probably get ready to go. One of my sons is having his 8th grade promotion exercise tonight.
Oh, awesome. Well, congratulations again to the Ivy family. And Jolene, you really surprised me. Holly and I were jumping in our seats because we couldn't believe that you actually tuned in to Truth 360 to call into our show.
This is the first day of early voting, and I really want to make sure as many people get out as possible. So
Awesome,
thank
Jolene.
you for doing the show.
And have a lovely time taking out a few moments to call in on such a special day for the Ivy family. Thank you, Jolene.
Sorry. You all take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, man, let me say while we're doing some shout-outs, thank you so much to Nikita Smith, who used to work for me, actually, and she did a big shout-out on social media for us. Thank you so much, Nikita. I got a lot of likes. I'd like to shout out Sylvia Barrina. Thank you so much, Sylvia. I haven't talked to her in so long. I can't believe they're paying attention, so thank you. We love all the support. Keep your tweets going. like us on Facebook. That's Truth 360 by BDC. You can find that. Use Truth 360 by BDC on every media platform. That's Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. What else is there? Google Plus.
Absolutely.
We are everywhere. We want you to like us, find us, follow us, friend us, and pin us wherever you are.
Yes, Holly, and I just want to tell our listening audience our viewing audience who are watching us that when you see me on the phone and on the laptop, I'm tweeting in, I'm texting, and I'm trying to stay in touch with our listeners. So, Holly, I really appreciate, I told you guys she was smart, that you're here to be able to cover everything while I'm paying attention to our listeners. So, Terry,
yes, ma'am.
We were really elated, and we're going to take a few more callers, but we just wanted you to share again, what is the real take-home message today that listeners need to know and need to tell their neighbors and one friend? If everybody who's listening in today told 3 people and they told 3 people, what would you want them to know?
Between now and June 24th, if you live in the state of Maryland, you need to figure out how to go and vote. Today started the first day of early vote. You got 7 more days of early voting. Every day this week up through Thursday next week. You can early vote. Then the final day to vote, so it will be June 24th. So June 12th through June 19th from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, June 12th through June 19th, you're allowed to go and cast your vote at early vote centers. And June 24th, there's the final day to vote. Get your vote cast, because if you don't, someone else is going to determine who is going to represent you, at least for the next 4 years. And since this is electing a new governor, the person who's elected this cycle could potentially serve for 8 years. So the decision that will be made on June 24th could be potentially an 8-year decision. So if you don't want to wait 8 years to have another opportunity to determine who's going to represent you, you have to vote sometime between June 12th and 19th or on June 24th.
And how do you early vote? I mean, that's another thing. Do people even know how to do that? Or do you just go down to your regular polling place? You got to send some paper in? How do you get it done?
Well, every county and jurisdiction have early vote centers. The larger counties like Prince George's and Montgomery County have 8 locations where you can early vote. If you don't know, just call your Board of Elections. They will tell you where the locations are where you can go and cast your ballot early. Again, early vote is June 12th through June 19th, and that includes Saturday and Sunday. So you don't have to take time off work to go and early vote. You get to vote on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and also on Sunday 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So there's really no excuse for people not being able to cast their votes. I understand that people right now, there are quite a few people who are just tired of politics, tired of politicians, tired of promises, but that's why you need to go vote, so that you can vote for people that you know are people who are honest, people who are people of character, and people who are people of truth.
Well, let me tell you, I actually am going to be out of town on Election Day, so I will be going to one of those early vote centers in Prince George's County while I'm here in town to make sure that my vote is cast. Listen, part of what we do here at Truth 60 is we want to get voices from everyone. So we're going to call one of Jennifer's good friends who's working with us, Juanika Fisher,
Absolutely.
and get her on the line to give us the perspective of the young people. Now, I have to say shamelessly while we're getting her on the phone that I went around and took little videos, and this is going to be some of that bonus content that you can get if you like us, pin us, follow us, friend us, or otherwise pay attention to us on social media, because we'll be having a YouTube channel in which you can actually, for those of you who aren't listening live or you just want to tell your friends about us, you'll be able to watch and listen to this show about an hour or two after it's over. We're going to put it on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to see it there. But let me tell you what I did. I think you did the same thing. I went and talked to the young people in my family. Did I mention we were shameless? We are shameless.
Shameless.
So I went and talked to my nephew. He's 15 years old. And I said, hey, what's a primary? Well, if you want to hear what he said, it was hilarious. You got to check out our YouTube channel after the show. That'll be our bonus content. Meanwhile, we're going to be getting Juanica Fisher. Who is Juanica Fisher?
Juanica Fisher is actually a wonderful young woman who is really, she's a graduate of not only undergrad but law school. But what I love about Juanica is she is a really active community leader. And in addition to all of the things that Juanica is doing to lift up the community, she's taken on the challenge with some of the women's initiatives that we have in Prince George's County to lead the younger women's movement. And so while we're thinking about primaries, Juanica happens to be working in one of the campaigns. But the reason Juanica was chosen is because she truly is a voice for getting young people literally engaged in and really paying attention to elections, to the election process, to primaries, and to people. And so I'm overjoyed to have Juanica to be calling in and to be our voice for young people today, because I think we fail if we don't succeed and make sure that we have a pathway or a plan for succession so that young people are prepared, ready, supported, engaged now, so that when they're ready to have their turn in running for elected office, that they're really engaged and they have the relationships and the knowledge about the process, about the inner workings. And so Juanica is one of those enterprising young people, and we're going to hear from her. Holly, you had some videos. Do you want to play them first, or we want to talk to
No, we're going to
Juanica?
use those videos for bonus content, because can you believe it? We need to get all our people in on the line.
my
We're
gosh.
using up all our time.
Juanica, are you here? I am here. Okay, Juanica, we're going to get you plugged in so that we can hear you. Juanica?
Yes.
Well, please take a moment and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Monica Fisher. I'm a young attorney. I went to Prince George's Law School. I reside in George County, Maryland, and I'm an
Well, Juanica, thank you so much for joining us. Here's what we want to know. What can we say? I mean, we know nobody is really voting in these elections, but we want to find out, what can we really say to young people, young professionals such as yourself? You know, what can we say to get them motivated and engaged? What are some of the issues that are resonating with them that might be going on in this primary election, particularly in Maryland, because that one's coming up June 24th,
Absolutely.
to get folks out to vote?
Right. Well, I think the huge, I think the state thing that was professional is that I assume that country is better than credit card debt. I think it actually hurts young people from getting because of at home, foreclosure prices really affected Maryland. Military general $1.5 billion, which is great, but to
Juanica, you're breaking up just a little bit, honey. We're going to ask you to repeat the last thing you said about the foreclosure crisis and how it's affecting young people.
Sure. I was going to say that young individuals don't have the resources or the equity right now to become homeowners. And homeowners are obviously more likely to vote and get engaged because of taxes and things. And when you in debt, it's really hard to politically.
Juanica, we're going to try to work out technical difficulties because we love hearing you express concerns about younger people, both from foreclosure, looking at economics, and that what they're thinking about education and student loans, but we can't hear you well. And so I'm going to try to get you in on a better line, and we're going to go ahead and try to see if we can get in another caller.
Actually, you know what we'll do while we're doing this? Let's talk about one of my favorite things, and that's money. The one thing we haven't really talked about in this whole show, and you know we cannot get off the air without talking about money and politics. I mean, money impacts everything, and y'all know I love money. But before we get to that, let's take our next song break.
For the love of money. 9-9. If you slip, you can jump, it fall in the nighttime. Gotta get mine. Ain't taking no shorts on the lounge and top of the phone. Call up my homie, tape at home, polishing this Mac 10 Chrome. Got a lick, we can hit so cold, the click is once again it's time. To the zone with a flip of bird, my wit to the curb, so I swerve and roll loud. To pick up the rest of my thugs, let's spread on the mission for counting up more now. Joe, when it hit the bump, gonna ride like every day with 4 more thugs. I'm a bro with it, stroll with till we end up in the grave and lane. Putting in my drive lane, we spotted the place and quickly rolled up. Gotta make that money, man. Hopped out of the ride, see flesh that showed up. Fucking the kaboom, so drop it on down with them into the room. Them dumb, and I'm shaking the dice and hitting in naturals on them fools, and I'm looking lovely. You better not think it's funny. I'm coming up quicker than 9 quarts, cause flesh be loving his money.
I'm giving up love to the hustlers, all them saints that busters, making that money, stand on your feet. And you better believe, gotta have that cheese for the green leaves, never catch me sleep. Steady on the grind, get mine, stand down from a crime, and I hit up the 9-9. Gotta keep that bankroll, making me say a 20s, nickels and dime. Hit us for stick up, lick up that 211. Gotta give us mind and feeling. Me kicking up dust, I'm a trailing, failing 187. That's how it is, that I got to have it in the night. What? Mission to check a meal and still be real, thugging on the clock, like creeping on the thumb up. Won't sleep till I'm done up, gotta blaze my gun up. Hunt up another plotting scheme, gotta make some drink, cause soldiers nut up, what up? Gotta get that business on, even though the Buddha run this done me feeling lovely, but I'm just in it for the love of the money.
Standing on the corner, straight slanging rocks. Oh man, here comes a crooked ass cop. So I dash, I ducks, and I hide behind a tree, making sure the popos don't see me. Now my fat sack of rocks, hell yeah, I stuffed them. Police on my drawers, I had to pause, and yeah, I still don't trust them. Now my game is tight, tight as hell is my game. Easy E, CPT or Eric Wright, it's all the same. Now those might trip on how I stacks my grips. I got to have it, yeah, for the love of this stupid sucker. Every time, follow me down the 9-9, and you will find all of me kind. Check out the rips, the nails, drop down, run them up and I'm in hood ribs. Like when I'm making me grip, when I'm in click, while I'm in ruthless. The thug I baby, put them in mud, buck them in pump up for the love of money. With nothing to lose, rolling with troops, rolling with thugs, it's going down. Steady pumping 3 rounds, running with a gang, bang, gonna make that money, man. It's still the same, steady running things wild. And follow me now, while I take you up into the dark side of me run. See, for the W done, for the bud I run.
Ready to get up on my face, up in this thug game. So people's me creeping, me crawling off on the mission back in the days. Crazy was running with thugs that wanted to get paid, but it took my son that the thugs to rip them up on the mission for money. You give up the gas, now drop it down fast, cause me and my partner was hungry. And if it was stolen, you might get your blow to the temple and bone road dogging. Just make this lick it simple and run to hell with Sandra. Me fellow with bang and double my rivers, remember me billion now. I'm on me dig ya, so deep in the ditching you with it, cause tricky was slipping, I'll get you and rip ya, so fuck the down. Steady robbing and stealing, making a killing, get a thug dealing, needed $1 million, making me money with the thugs be chilling. For the money these fools be sending Cleveland, with the find me thug getting off in the brazen skullers. And when I stick them, lick them, remember I get them up for the love of money.
Stoking cat food, walking jet mode. Stoking cat food, walking jet mode.
Hey.
That was hot, Holly. Yes,
You
yes,
like that,
yes.
both of us? And one of my favorite, unfortunately deceased, Easy E. We even got a shout out from our station manager. Jeremy had to come around the curtain and give it up for Easy E.
Easy E.
All right, but listen, they put what I
school.
Well, you know, we do what we do. We got some new school stuff coming up, but that may be for a future show. Hey, but listen, we got to get serious about money in politics.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, let's face it. A lot of these decisions are being made to either force people to spend more, force people to not spend more, and at the end of the day, it's the voter who loses out. Tell us what's happening with money in politics.
Hey, again, if you're not involved and you don't vote, someone is making the decision about your life, your quality of your life, and lack thereof. whether it's increasing a tax on gas, whether it's increasing a tax on food, whether it's increasing a tax on whatever it is, it's taking money out of your pocket and your ability to take care of your family. So politics, and those taxes are going and being distributed to other folk. Whether it, someone to build a highway and a usury fee to pay for that highway. Someone is making millions and millions of dollars. Companies are making millions of dollars off the backs of taxpayers because someone has to get those contracts. What I typically try to tell people to sort of break this down from a business perspective is that politicians are essentially CEOs of a district that they're elected in. But guess what? Every CEO in a corporation has a board of directors that have to hire them. And that board of directors also has the ability to fire them. The constituents, the voters, are the board of directors. Each one of them have a share in that corporation, and that share is called their vote. If you don't exercise your vote, then you are not really taking advantage of you owning shares in the corporation called the body of politics in your jurisdiction. And that's what folks need to do. When you see a politician coming, that's someone who works for you. They work at your direction, but you have to exercise that.
Man, and let's start talking about how many millions of dollars is being spent to try to get our vote. I mean, one thing that I was interested in is, a lot of parties, Democrat and Republican, make decisions on when to have the primary. One thing that we heard from folks that we interviewed was that they're just election weary. I mean, if you live in the DMV, you get it from all sides. I mean, we've already had to deal with elections in D.C., which was mind-blowing, right? We just had an election, and then in 2 more weeks, we're going to have what? Another election. Precisely. I mean, we're just tired. How come these folks can't all get together? I mean, I don't know if it's true, but one of the things that a lot of folks that I've heard, I mean, actually, one thing that happened in D.C., they actually moved the primaries up. So that they wouldn't have to spend as much money as they would normally spend having a later primary by shortening the time that they had. I mean, talk about how that influence happens.
D.C. had their primary on April 1st. Who has a primary or election day on April Fool's Day? April 1st every year is April Fool's Day. But they had an election on April 1st, and it ended up being moved from September, which the voters were somewhat accustomed to voting in September. They moved it to April 1st, and now they had the lowest voter turnout in 30 years in this previous election. And that's what happens when you move something from that people have been accustomed to.
Yeah, and something else that I was impressed with that we really didn't talk about, Holly, but even just this week, we not only had the primaries in Northern Virginia, but one major primary that changed the face of the Republican Party as it exists. The majority House leader, Eric Cantor, was unseated by an utterly unknown individual, and I think he outspent him 5-1. He spent $4 or $5 million in this campaign and lost. What do you think about that?
Actually, he outspent him probably close to 30-1. I think his opponent only spent maybe a couple $100,000 to $5 million that Cantor raised. Essentially, it boils down to Cantor lost connection with his base. His base wanted him to advocate for what they considered to be priorities, and he was advocating for something totally different.
Yeah, I used to head an immigration voting rights center, We Are America Alliance, and I, for one, as a person who advocates for immigrant rights, was glad to see Cantor go down. And particularly how hard, I mean, he basically based his whole campaign around the destruction of immigrant rights. And so I agree. Not only did he lose touch with them, I don't think he's been paying attention to the census. Does he know who lives in his district?
And that's what was amazing to me, Holly, that I saw power. Like when everyone was reeling about the Republican Party party and this incumbent being, and what does it mean? I was just impressed that it was the voters who made the difference, that at the end of the day, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about name recognition, all of the other things that we say you got to put yourself out there and signage. It really came down to the consciousness of voters in his district. And I think that speaks volume to the power of your voice being heard. What did you call us, Terry? We are all on the board.
You're the board of directors of your district. Eric Cantor was theoretically, according to his pollsters, 20 to 30 points above his opponent in the election, in the waning days and weeks of the election. And to lose, it's incredible.
That's real. I mean, that's real talk. And I mean, actually, what I love about this story, I mean, granted, I love the fact that Cantor lost. I'm not going to lie. I love that.
Talk about brutal honesty, Holly.
But what I really love about this is that an underdog that didn't raise the millions and millions and millions of dollars, was able to pull out a win. Because sometimes, and actually, one of my great friends, Jeff Robinson, works with the Public Finance Committee. He doesn't know. Well, he probably does because I sent him an email. We're going to have him on one of our upcoming shows. But, I mean, I think the thing that I really love about it is that this guy won. Now, unfortunately, and I might be wrong about this, but unfortunately, I think he won more because the incumbent with the millions of dollars sort of tanked himself more so than his ability to get his message out. But it sure does do my heart good to see that somebody that is better than the alternative. I can't even say he's a good guy. We're going to just go better with the alternative. With limited money, was able to pull it out. That's exciting.
It's impressive, and I think it speaks to the beauty of America, that in this democratic society, all politics is local. And if you don't take care of your constituents, if you don't keep your ear to the pulse of what's going on in your own community, and that's why I try to encourage individuals, engage your elected leader, get to know them, take a trip to Annapolis. Sometimes you think we don't need to go on a field trip. It doesn't make a difference, but it makes all the difference in the world.
It does. And just a little point of history. The majority leader of Congress, that office and that position was created in 1899. Never have a majority leader of the House of Representatives lost an election until Eric Cantor.
Wow.
So this is truly that David versus Goliath.
Wow.
History was made.
History was made. I think it's awesome. Holly, I have just had such a great time. We are down and under our last half hour of our first show. We can't believe it. I mean, we've been so excited about being in a position to use this Listen Vision Live platform to educate and empower. But wow, where did the time go?
The time is moving, but listen, I can't let us get off this money subject quite yet. We got to hit it a little bit harder. Right. And let me tell you what I really want to talk about with this. We got to talk about who's writing these checks to these folks.
Absolutely.
And let me tell you something. If you're not voting, that's a problem. But you know what is also a problem? If you're not writing a check, it's a problem. Because in this country, believe it or not, we don't just vote one way, and unfortunately all the time, we vote two ways. So if you really want to get involved with what's happening in your community, you need to be doing two things. First thing you need to do is vote. That one's free. But the second thing you need to do is you need to be writing a check. You need to be pulling out your $25 and sending it to the person who you most want to see in office. Because if they don't have your support, both with your vote and with your money, they're not going to be able to get their message out.
Absolutely. And this weekend, I'm going to take liberty, Holly, to be a little Prince George's focus. Our county executive, Rashawn Baker, is running unopposed, which is just awesome because it speaks to a testament of how his comprehensive, integrated approach to leadership and focused on lifting up our educational school system and really creating an environment for a thriving economic community. I mean, he's doing such a fabulous job. But this weekend, he took all of his funds to choose candidates that he believed in their character, commitment, and integrity, and he's given his campaign dollars to their elections. I thought that was fabulous. He had a great Get Out the Rally vote this weekend, and in the Get Out to Rally vote this weekend, I was just impressed to see how he didn't talk about the elected leaders and what they're going to be able to do for him in his office as county executive, he talked about that he's from Cheverly, Maryland, and that his home is there. That's where his kids grew up, and he's looking at elected leaders who think in junction with him so that he can have leaders when he's done in 4 more years that are people that he believed in and he invested in. So I like that point, Holly. You made that at our We3 conference last year.
I'm all about writing a check.
Everyone was so excited to hear you say and teach voting. Yes, but the money matters. And
The
so
money
while
matters.
Eric Cantor's election showed how powerful the vote is, I definitely know that it's important to get those literature drops, to hear your elected leaders or the candidates' views on things. That radio promo, I was so moved when I heard Sheriff Melvin High talk about the great work he's done in domestic violence, the great things that he's done to try to make our community safer. And so while I'm kind of giving homage to it, I said something when State's Attorney Angela Osa-Brooks was having a fundraiser. I told the people in the room, because Holly, you've influenced me. You know, I'm always like, not the money, roll up your sleeves, knock on doors. But Holly convinced me to care about the money. And so I said, I thought there was no greater compliment that you could give an elected a leader or a candidate running for elected office than to say to them, you mean enough to me. Your vision for leadership, your priorities are consistent with what I believe in. Some things that you said you're going to do are really what I think should be done. Compliment them with your hard-earned money. So, Holly, I'm going to become a money girl. That's my goal. 2014.
I believe
show
in
me
being
the money.
Well,
So
let
write
tell
me
you,
the check.
We will be talking about money on this show. I promise you, every week.
Every week.
Whatever we're talking about, no matter what it is, money will be part of it. But hey, we got Juanica back.
Yay! Hi, Juanica.
Can you hear me?
We can
You
hear
can?
you.
Yay.
Yeah. On the air 360. Truth 360 by BDC. We now have Juanica Fisher. Juanica, what the heck were you saying about youth?
I was just saying, it's funny, it relates to exactly what you were talking about, money. You know, young professionals are, I want to say, drowning. Some are dying under student debt. I mean, student debt is higher than credit card debt in this country. So to ask young professionals to get involved, you need to have economic freedom to then realize your political freedom. Because just working to pay those student loans and living costs is really hard to get young people engaged in their spare time. And I was talking about foreclosure because, you know, my parents were starting to own a home at my age. Most of my friends are renting or borrowing money from their parents to use that deposit. And I think that shows you just the start of economic growth for our young professionals. You know, Maryland is actually ranked one of the worst in personal income growth the last 8 years. So that means our incomes aren't growing, and that means young professionals aren't growing, and that's a problem.
Absolutely. And, you know, I want to go back and circle back to some of the important information you were sharing with us about the need to have young people out and voting in this primary election.
Yeah, young people are necessary. This election's going to be close. Don't believe all the hype. It's going to be really, really close. And I think, you know, young people really need to get their voices out because the next 8 years are really going to solidify and set the tone for the state of Maryland. When it comes to, you know, casinos, 40 tax increases the last 8 years, our public education, some people say we're number one, when we're really number two in the achievement gap versus your race and your zip code really affects the public schooling you're going to get. And, you know, it's my generation that are about to have the new babies for the state of Maryland. So we really care about what the schools are going to look like, our property values, taxes, are we competitive to other states, and student loans. So I'm really, really passionate. And this primary, even though it's under the radar when it comes to political awareness, this primary is going to affect the state of Maryland the most in the next years to come.
And what are some of the things that your friends are talking about? Are your friends going to be getting out and voting? And what are some of the things they're saying about these primary elections?
Well, of course my friends are going out to vote because I am politically engaged. Some have no idea what's going on, really. They are just totally out of it. And the ones that I think are going to the polls are really, really frustrated by taxes. You know, young professionals don't have that much money. We have loans, like I said. So I hear a lot of young people leaning towards Doug Gansler, who has a more comprehensive and realistic tax policy goal versus Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown is like, well, I'm going to try to cap them, but really he's only done, 40 tax increases in casinos to mortgage our future. So I definitely hear that grumbling going on. And student loans, man, that's the number one thing. And, I know that different campaigns have different methods to it. So I think young people are looking towards that. But most aren't that engaged this election.
So we know early vote is happening. Do you think that young people are going to take advantage of their early vote opportunity? Early vote in Maryland opened today.
It did, and I hope that they do. But to be honest with you, Holly, people don't even know where their early voting polling place is. You know what I mean? That is just really, really sad. And because young professionals either don't have kids or starting to have kids, they're not as politically engaged. So I think you'll see more young people at the polls on election day itself than per se early voting, especially because those hours mostly are work hours. And then I don't know if you've been to Maryland, but traffic is a lot. And so even if you're getting off at 5 or 6, a lot are in traffic and aren't going to hit the polls by the time they close.
Yeah, I do. I live in Hyattsville, so I know what it's like.
Right?
So, listen, we're going to wrap up, but I cannot let you go without letting you give, a really strong message of encouragement. What would you say to that young voter, 18 to 25, to get them to say, pay attention? Or maybe even more importantly, what would you say to get their parents to get them to pay attention?
What I would say is, this state is our future. And, our parents can vote, senior citizens can vote, but the future is not theirs, it's ours. And I don't want to be left in a state that's dealing with economic decline, more taxes, pollution in the Bay. I want to be with a state that has economic development, rights for all people. We protect our environment, we protect our youth, we protect families. And so if you really care about what's going to go on in your future and your family, you got to pay attention and you got to vote. And it's us who are creating the future. And I know it's so corny that people say that, but it's so true. My sister is 30, a young person. She just had a baby. My nephew is 7 months. And I'm like, this state is for him. It's not for me, it's for him. So if I don't get up and vote, who's going to do it? So that's what I would say.
Juanita.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Juanita, it's just absolutely awesome. And we have the president of the Democratic Central Committee here, and he had a thought to just ask you one last question. You got 1 more minute?
Hi, Juanita.
Sure. Hi, how are you?
Great, how are you? What is, I have a young daughter who's in her 20s, and I got a son in his 30s, and I sense they like others are just turned off to politics as it is right now. They've lost that hope that they all had in 2008. What needs to happen in order for young folks to regain that hope that was there in 2008 that propelled Obama to the presidency?
Right. I mean, I'm only one person, but what I would say that ignites me and I think ignites young people that are politically engaged is people love instant gratification. That's why people don't like politics. People love to see, I did this one thing and I got a result, right? People don't like to see the slow process of politics. So I think what's going to ignite people is having not only our local government, but faith-based organizations and young people actually get involved in our government and work towards seeing things come to fruition. Whether that's having young people volunteer in like a home visiting program or having young people be more engaged when it comes to our economic, commerce boards, for example. So if you have the chamber, right, you should have young professionals be sitting on the chamber and having an active role. And they don't. They wait for someone who's owned a business and it's been 20 years to get them engaged, when there really should be a seat for that person to develop them. And I think the more that we encourage people to have an active role like that, I think you're going to see that passion and that hope back. I mean, every Chamber of Commerce in the state of Maryland should have a position for an under 30 young business professional, period. But they don't. And I think that's how you get them involved, because they can tell you what do we need to develop, and that's how you're going to get people the hope that they need. I mean, I love me some Annapolis, but there are some people in Annapolis that have been sitting in that office for 30, 40, 50 plus years. By the time my generation gets to even run for delegate or be in the Senate in Annapolis, we're going to be in our 50s. We should be in our 30s and be able to run for office. And, so that's the issue. There's the lack of turnover and the lack of seats available for young people. And I think the more we do that, the more you'll see them encouraged.
Oh, wonderful, Juanica. Well, we have enjoyed you. Thank you for being a trooper and getting Skype into us.
Thank you.
We are so excited just to make sure that each of these segments, whether it's young people, money, they've been well planned so that we can hear from you. We don't want to be a vacuum. We want to be a voice. Thank you, Juanica.
All right, well, let's face it. We're True 360, so we're trying to get the perspective from everybody.
Everybody, 360 degrees.
Thank you,
Juanica.
Thank you, Juanica. All right, well, we're almost at the end. Hey, let's just take a quick break and just do our one song, and then we'll come back and wrap it up, Jen.
All right, we did it. 2 hours.
You gotta shake it. Shake it, tambourine, go on, get yourself a whistle. Okay. Shake it, tambourine, go on, get yourself a whistle. Okay. Shake it, tambourine, go on, get yourself a whistle. Shake it, tambourine, go on. Easy. Shake it, tambourine, go on. I go by the name of Swiss Beast the Monster. We're gonna get this party started. Don't serve fast. Let's go.
EVE come through in the Maserati. Throwing it big like I live in the Taj Mahal. Talk and I don't get in the blase blah. That's why they loving her. That's real, been the chick that they talk about. Damn is the words that come out their mouth. She look good always without a doubt. Ask for it, get you back and cake and now. Come on. They be watching while we wiggle around. Look at them drooling. They ain't used to the sound. I keep them moving. All my ladies, put your hands in the air. It's all right now. We gon' keep you up on your feet the whole night now. Pop them bottles, yeah, drink that up now.
Hey, I had to get some female singers up
Just
in
a
there.
little
Just
bit.
a little bit
you know
of,
how much we
to
do.
get it going. Hey, let
Yes.
me say it. Let's close the show out, Jennifer. We're almost done. I can't believe we made it through a whole 2 hours, but listen. At the end of every show, here's what we're going to do. We're going to interchangeably do this, but today I'm going to tell you my take, and you can check on more of my take on my blog, Holly Knows. And Jennifer's going to do her take, and then we're going to end with some resources and some community announcements. If you have any community announcements you'd like to share with us, email them to us at truth360@blackdresscollaborative.com. We'll try to get them in, but we'll do that at the end. Listen, we've had a great show. Special thanks to our guests. But there's 3 points that I want to leave you with. Hitting them hard again. In politics, 2 things matter: voting and money. On the voting side, hey, if you want us to get out and vote, then we need to have something to vote for. We need to have quality leadership people running. And we need them to be able to express to us not what's in their interest, but let's face it, what's in our interest. I don't have time to figure out all the different policies and read a position paper, go to a committee hearing. I mean, yeah, I know I should do that, but hey, I don't have the time for that. I'm trying to run 2 companies. I'm half coastal. No way for me to get that done. So we need leadership that's quality, that's going to express and speak to us. And finally, I can't get off the mic without saying, hey, we need money. And by that, we need to do 2 things. We need to be writing a check to these folks so that the people that are quality are getting their message out. So my 2 things, it's real easy. Vote and write a check. Jennifer, what you got to say?
I think it's excellent, Holly, and I'm just going to take what you said to just one more deeper level. And what that is that voting is important. It is the beginning of your voice. So we want people to vote, and we want you to spend your money because it's the beginning of the conversation. But then I want you to be legislatively active. We have an amazing conference in Prince George's County called the Women Educated, Women Empowered, Women Engaged Conference. It's hosted by my fellow sisters and brothers on the Prince George's County Commission for Women. And I'm going to ask that you text in WE3 to 714 441. That's WE3 to 71441. And if you text in to me, we'll be able to reach out back to you. But when you vote, it is the beginning of the conversation. Vote, invest by giving your money, stay engaged with the elected leaders that you've championed, and then work with them through the legislative process on the local, state, and federal level so that your voice can be heard, so that you can have legislation taken up to do things like get rid of those speed cameras, to do bigger things like get some housing for victims of domestic violence and human trafficking, do some things like get more technology for our schools. And so all of these things can be done when you make your voice heard through legislative advocacy. We've had you here, Terry, for a guest, so we can give up 30 seconds, right, Holly?
Absolutely.
It'll be less than 30 seconds. It'll be less than 30 seconds. Holly said there's two things. That one is to vote and the other is to contribute. And I will say that there is actually a critical third thing. In James, the book of James in the Bible, chapter 4, verse 2, it says, you have not because you ask not. So add an ask to that contribution and to that vote, because you don't want them coming back and say, well, you never ask.
All right.
That sounds good.
Awesome.
Hey, y'all, that's a wrap. We'll be back here next week, Thursday 4 to 6 Eastern Time on ListenVision.live. Thank you
so much for your time and energy. We just love you. This was a first grade show, Holly. We did it! Truth 360 by Black Dress Collaborative. Look for us Thursdays on ListenVisionLive.com, 4 to 6 p.m. every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
Good night, everybody.